And more developing news now. These people are in big trouble tonight. They are facing charges of child sex trafficking, prostitution, and sexual assault. And that's not all.
The FBI busting dozens of pimps who they say were preying on young girls.
Nearly a dozen MS-13 gang members were just arrested in Virginia for trafficking and brutally beating a 13-year-old girl.
My name is Lindsay Bettis, and I'm from Sparks, Nevada. And I am about to see my daughter, who is 14, for the first time in 3 weeks. And she ran away to Mexico. Ultimately, at the end of it, they end up being sex trafficked. I'm so grateful for the Saving in America, because without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. It's amazing what they do. It really is. I'm so grateful for them. And to be in constant contact and have consistency and compassion with such a sensitive subject or situation. Yeah, and I've never even seen one of these guys yet. And they have brought back my daughter.
Charges of child sex
The FBI
trafficking,
busting dozens of pimps who
and
they
sexual
say
assault.
were
That's not all.
preying on
Trafficking,
I was
trafficking, and sexual assault. That's not all.
We became involved with Hannah when initially the mom thought that she had ran away. Come to find out, we investigated that she had been taken to Mexico. We got involved with Save in America, or actually they got involved with us. Somehow Hannah's mom, Lindsay, located Saved in America, and then from that point on, we just started working side by side with them. The driving force was honestly Lindsay, who's Hannah's mother. She was the one that introduced us to them, and then from that point on, Frank and I started speaking with each other, and the communication was natural, and we just continued to work with each other. It was different, especially coming from a law enforcement perspective. We normally don't work with private organizations. So, it took a little bit of us leaping out there and trusting what they were telling us. And I'll be honest, what sold us was when they provided us with a PowerPoint showing the location where Hannah was at, giving us the actual GPS location and photos of the house. From that point on, we were impressed with the work they did for us. So from that point on, once we knew where Hannah was at, we were able to communicate with the FBI, marshals, and local authorities down in Mexico, and we were able to get what we call eyes on the house, right? Surveillance on the house, and we were able to see Hannah in the balcony. And from that point on, we knew we had the correct location, and from that point on, we just relied on the Mexican authorities, and that was a difficult part for us, because we couldn't just go into Mexico and rescue Hannah, so we had to rely on all these other agencies to assist us. So once we recovered Hannah, myself and another detective flew down to San Diego to conduct an interview with her and reunite her with her mother, Lindsay. I would say that it was a fantastic experience to know that there's other people besides law enforcement out there. They have the same drive and are there to help us, honestly, and we couldn't have done it without Saved in America. We were able to get the suspect prosecuted. We brought him back to the U.S. And he was prosecuted. Currently, he's still in prison right now. So she, to my knowledge, she's still here in Sparks, and I'm not sure where she's at, but I know that she's back here. I would say monitor what your kids are doing online, because that's how this investigation started. Hannah became friends with the suspect through YouTube, and so you need to keep an eye on your kids and see what they're doing. Because if you're not paying attention, somebody else is giving them the attention that they're seeking. So I just want to say thank you to Save in America for assisting us in this investigation. All I can tell them is to continue doing what they're doing. They do an excellent job. They are professional in what they do. And any other law enforcement agency that is working with Save in America, I encourage you to work with them and offer them as much assistance as you can.
Welcome to the Stressful to Successful podcast with your co-hosts Tiffany, Chasson, and myself, Jaden Amico. And today we have a very special guest by the name of Joseph Travers, the founder of Saved in America. Joseph, can you kind of clarify what that means?
Saved in America is a nonprofit organization that consists of former military special operators, Navy SEALs, Marine Raiders, former law enforcement officers who become licensed insured private investigators who, for free, assist parents and law enforcement for the location and recovery of children.
So if someone loses their child, or in a sense, a child typically runs off in these cases, we'd say?
Yeah, and what we focus on is a runaway missing child. Some fall into exploitation, and so we unfortunately have to look for children that are being exploited too. But let me give you some statistics so you have an understanding. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, approximately 300,000 children go missing in 1 year, American children. And according to a study by Dr. Amy Carpenter of the University of San Diego, in coordination with the Department of Justice, 1/3 of those children, which would be about 100,000, are being sexually exploited. So when you put the stats together, if you have a young girl who runs away from home, the odds are 30 to 33% that she's going to be exploited by a sex trafficker. Now there's another statistic from Madero County, California, that says that there's what we call the Golden 48. Within the first 48 hours that a runaway goes missing, she will be contacted by a recruiter for the traffickers.
No kidding. So how does that work?
Well, a lot of times, and you and your audience is seeing the movie Taken.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen here in this country because the police are too good with what they do. So, for example, and that's the field that I come from, law enforcement. So if I was a cop and I get a call and it's a missing child case, and I go and the parents tell me, oh no, this guy pulled up in a car and he just grabbed her and he took her, right? Just like kind of what happened in Taken.
Yeah.
They would have helicopters out. You would have an all points bulletin. I mean, there's no way that someone's going to get away with that in this country. Because I said law enforcement is too good at what they do for that. Now, so what the predators do is they use social networking. So,
what does that mean exactly?
Well, they find the girl. Okay, young girls today. Okay, what is one of the big things that they want to be involved in?
Instagram, Tinder,
dating
apps,
exactly,
of any sort, things.
TikTok.
Oh no!
And what happens is they know this. So another phenomenon of today that didn't even exist 10 years ago is called social influencers. Right? So young girls, they want to have as many friends or contacts as they can because a lot of them want to, in their own world, want to be a social influencer.
Right.
And look how we promote social influencers.
Young children dancing, shaking their bodies at a camera.
Well, and not just that, the accumulation of people that they don't even know.
Like the following that they have.
I mean, that's...
The more the better.
Correct, the more the better, because eventually, and how do social influencers, right, who can make a living out of it, how do they do that at first? The more followers.
Yeah, the more followers.
And then they eventually get sponsors. Mm-hmm. So a young girl, right, who's now, they have a computer in their hand, right? There's no such thing as a 13-year-old that doesn't have a cell phone anymore. I don't know if you know any.
Even younger nowadays.
Even younger. So you have this whole computer apparatus in this child's hand. And they get friends, and then friends of their friends want to be their friend. And how many kids really are looking to say, oh, so-and-so wants to be your friend? They don't check it out. They just click it.
Yeah, like, please, another follower? Let's go.
Do you see what I mean? So what happens is there's this study we were talking about also talks about the public school system, for example, in San Diego County. There's at least one recruiter in every public junior and senior school in San Diego County. So which means a recruiter, a gang member, right? Because the people who are doing this, they're part of what I call an evil triad. So you have the street gangs with the prison gangs with the cartels. So it used to be, and when I was in law enforcement in the 80s going into the 90s, that the cartels got together in an organized way with the prison gangs, with an organized way with the street gangs, and took over narcotics trafficking. Well, around 2008, they decided they're going to add child sex trafficking to their menu. So they control that. So a real quick, hard example of that. So it used to be like in the 60s or 70s, if someone wanted to go sell, say, a nickel bag of marijuana, they would go down to Mexico, maybe on a surfing safari, and they'd pick up a key of dope, and they'd come back and wrap it up and make extra money for their surfing trips, right? And nobody cared. I mean, you know what I mean? As far as it wasn't organized.
Yeah.
Can't do that nowadays. If you decide to go do that and then start selling it illegally, this triad, they're going to come knocking on your door because you have to pay taxes.
Taxes.
Now,
Quotations.
Let me explain what taxes are. So
Like drug taxes.
on your profit, but not to the government though.
No,
Like they're taking commission because it's their territory.
Exactly, they're taking commission. So why is it prison gangs, street gangs, and cartels? Cartels are the supplier, right? Give the balance sheet to the prison gangs, right, are getting their take. But what if a gang member from whatever gang, right, he gets busted like they usually do, eventually you go to prison, and he hasn't been paying his taxes. Well, they have a long list of people waiting to be jumped in from a street gang to the prison gang level, which is a higher level, to kill that person who hasn't been paying their taxes. Because one of the requirements to be a prison gang member is to commit a murder for the prison gang. So that, and that's the organizational structure. So somebody theoretically couldn't just go and accumulate young girls and start to sell them unless they're affiliated with this. See,
Wow.
so it makes it to where it's very, very well organized. So we've investigated kids, 14, 15, 16, that have been seduced online, that are being trafficked. But let's say, and here's a true story, and I'll just tell you the geography of it.
Yeah, please.
A girl was seduced by a gang affiliate in Sacramento, California, and we ended up locating her in Las Vegas. Because once they got control of her, right, and they used fentanyl and heroin to get the child addicted, and then they just move them from Sacramento because the police are looking for her in Sacramento. So they just move her to the gang affiliate in Las Vegas or wherever the case may be.
So let me get this straight. So just for like the parents out there that are watching or listening to this, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of recap how this like step by step works so what parents can generally like look out for. Do you feel as though hold on, first off, sorry, let me take a step back. What age do you feel as though a child should have a phone to begin with? I mean, there's things where it's like obviously what's going on online, which child sex trafficking, so on and so forth, right? But how do parents even are communicating with their children nowadays? How can you incorporate the both?
Well, there are applications you can put on a phone. First of all, you're not going to get away with no phone.
No.
It's just not going to happen. So what you want to do is you want to get to know the different applications you can use for safety and to be able to observe so your child can't hide anything. In other words, everything they have you can find out. There's apps you can do and look. And there's also maps where you can tell where your child is.
On Find My Friends is one of those apps.
Correct. And there's ones that are even hidden the child doesn't even know. So I always tell parents, don't take the cell phone away. Let them keep the phone, because if that ever happens to them, now you can find them through the phone.
Yes.
For a short duration of time, because the bad guys know that. So they usually take their cell phones away. And then they
toss them or something.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so like, oh, it says your child's here near a lake. Let's go. And then it's in the middle of the water, and they probably find the phone, I'm assuming, right? Is that like the first step of where people would go and look, is obviously find My Friends on the iPhone app?
Yeah, well, when you're doing, let's jump to the overhead of what's going on with Saved in America.
Yeah.
So we formed this, and then in December 2014, we had our first operation. We recovered a 14-year-old that was trafficked since 11 here in San Diego County. Since that time, we've assisted parents and law enforcement to help locate their children in 279 cases across the country.
Wow.
And we have approximately 30 members of our operational team here in San Diego County, but we have over 100 reserves across the country that are our boots on the ground for outside of California. And they're all what we call certified missing exploited child investigators. They're current or retired law enforcement officers or licensed private investigators or special operators. So we just had a case in Orlando where we went to a conference to present, but there was a 16-year-old girl that needed to be recovered. So we had our boots on the ground go down to where we could verify the location where the child was while we were there in Orlando.
What kind of operators are you talking about here? Like, who do you have to be able to get involved with Saved in America?
Well, we have different volunteer platforms. Number one, you have what we call certified missing exploited child investigator. Those are our boots on the ground.
Right.
You have to be current or retired law enforcement, local, state, or federal, former special operator like a Navy SEAL, Marine Raider, or a licensed private investigator. So if you have those credentials, and all those three credentials already say you've been background too, so a background check. So you have to study our textbook that we wrote. It's in its 4th edition, Investigation of Missing and Exploited Children, the Gateway to Child Sex Trafficking.
This right here.
Yes, so they study that, then they have to take a test, 90%, and it's a timed test, and then they become certified. Then once they're certified, and then they're eligible to go assist us across the country if we need someone to go verify the location or confirm where the child is.
Okay. And this right here, just for those who are watching, this is your command center. This is that command center that we're actually in right now. Can you tell us a little bit about your command center?
Oh yeah, the mobile command center we use this for 2 things. We use it 3 things. It's our office, as you could tell. We have all supplies, we have records. We have a record of every single one of the 279 operations, which you've seen the books, right?
Oh yes.
The pictures of the child, everything. And letters from law enforcement to law enforcement, a synopsis of the case. And then there's a link to each one that goes to a evidence preserved Dropbox in case law enforcement or a civil court needs the record, so it's preserved for them. So we use this as an office, then we use this for operations, and we've used it for 7 operations in Las Vegas, in Nevada, and in Reno. And we also use it for operations here, and then we use it for community events, for education and awareness.
Well, yeah, very important.
Yeah, we'll go to a community event like National Night Out, or we just went to Western Days for here in North San Diego County, where we were in a parade with it, actually. So
fun.
Yeah, we let some of the citizens come in and tour it and look at some of the pictures, and everything is confidential, especially because we don't want to reoffend the child. And then we also, when we assist in the location or recovery of the child, we also assist with rehabilitation. We have a MFCC on staff.
What does that stand for?
marriage, family, and child counselor certified by the state to help the parents go through the situation and then help the child once the child is recovered. And then we also provide scholarships once the child gets out of rehabilitation. Then we give them scholarships for either vocational training or for college to try to make the child whole again.
That's awesome. So how do cases usually come about to you? Do you usually get calls from law enforcement, or is it usually from a parent?
We've had a few calls from law enforcement, and mostly from the parent. So the parent will call, and there's a 6-step process we use, which is in the textbook. So the parent will call, we gather the information, we give it to our case manager, and then give it to our social networking investigator, who really goes into social networking and goes through the layers and layers and layers and layers of hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of contacts to the child. And that's how we part of the way we find the child is we identify who that recruiter was from all that. And we have a platform. This person is an expert in social networking that we use. So then we send that to our operators, and we have confirmation of evidence, a team for that. And then we also have another team that when we know for a fact that we confirm through the social networking and through the other investigators that in fact is where the child is. If law enforcement could then go do the stakeout or the surveillance to recover the child, or if they don't have the resources, we'll even do that. As investigators sit out and wait till we get eyes on, and then call on law enforcement to come and take the child.
That's like really in depth. That is insane.
Yeah, and then the last step, and then is of course the rehabilitation.
The most important step.
Correct.
I feel as though is rehabilitation. You don't want them to fall back. I mean, honestly, it's really wonderful what you're doing. You know, Saved in America, you're literally finding the lost child in a sense, or trafficked child, if you will, right? And then you're not just stopping there. Here's your child back. Have a good day. You want to help even more.
Well, finding the child, as difficult as it is.
Sure.
It's extremely difficult, by the way. That's only half the battle, because we have multiple children in these books, and you saw some of them. We had to go get twice, 3 times, even more, because what happens is, remember, the control of the child is done through narcotics, through opiates.
Now they're addicted.
They're addicted, so they want the narcotic. See, so they could even go through rehabilitation and then want the urge to go back and get the narcotic again, and unbelievably they'll call the person who abducted them in the first place to get the narcotic.
So no matter what crap they went through, horrid of all the horror, and addicted to drugs, they're saved through Saved in America, and they just are so addicted to these drugs, and these drugs are very addictive. You know, heroin, meth, so on, as opiates, as you say. They just want to go right back to where they got it from.
Right, because of the addiction. Now,
wow.
You don't even have to be a child for that. Look at your amount of heroin addicts that are adults that successfully, I mean, I've been working around, criminals and narcotics, the civil criminal justice system all my life, since from in the United States Navy and then out.
Oh, wow.
As a law enforcement officer, licensed investigator. Can't believe it's my 40th year as a licensed private investigator. So it's really hard to find a heroin addict who's really not addicted anymore. That's really tough. The addiction is so strong. Now imagine doing the same thing with a young mind that isn't fully developed yet. And there lies the problem, and there lies the control.
I think we were listening to watching one of the videos on your website about it's hard once you get there that sometimes they don't even recognize their parents, or they don't even have that connection anymore. Yeah,
here's and the video, one of the videos that it really tells it, because we've put this out. The child, HBO Vice, went out with us for a case. They were out with us, following us around. We got information of a 14-year-old child we later found out was at a cartel house, that the recruiters recruited them through social networking, drove up to Utah, brought them down. First they went through Vegas and then ended up in San Diego. And we got the information from an informant, figured out where it was, brought HBO Vice with us, on film, she's being taken out of the house, and she was 14. Well, she later talked about what happened to her, and that we have that video where her face is covered, but she explains what they did.
Yeah.
They plied her up on drugs and then used her, and then were even going to sell her to somebody out of country
Right.
before we got her. And she said even when we did the recovery and we ended up helping the mom get the child back to Utah, she didn't like us. She thought we and her parent were the bad guys because she was so addicted to the drug. She was addicted to the person giving her the drug.
So she ran.
Well, she actually left again later, to try to get back, although we got her before she could get back. But yeah, that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to get away from the people helping her, basically, is what happened.
And because she had no idea.
She had no idea.
She didn't know who you guys were.
She was on, when we took her out of the house, the cartel house, she was under the influence of heroin.
Wow. What's it? For parents listening or watching, okay, what are some signs that your child is on drugs? Or using, or around it even?
They just don't participate in the same things they used to. For example, let's say you have a young girl that is really motivated by soccer, which is a common thing, right? So you grow up in soccer leagues since you're what, 5, 6, 7? I don't know what the age is.
Something like that.
Yeah, like little boys and Little League Baseball, or Pop Warner football.
Yeah.
And then you got the soccer leagues, right, for the girls mostly, but the other different things. So let's say they decide, I'm done with soccer. Now wait a second. You've played soccer since you were 6, and now you're 13 and you don't want to play soccer anymore? I mean, that's a pretty good sign. And their grades start to slip, and they slowly change their friends, right?
So
and
they don't hang out
and they're online a lot.
Uh-huh.
Then you think, okay, there's something going on here. I got to fit. Now, I'm not saying that means they're about to be trafficked or recruiters after them, but it could be. But regardless, something's going on with your child, and you need to know what's going on with your child because it could be something else. So, and it's not that far distant because you know what happens when you're in, say, junior high, right? So junior high now is what, 12, 13, 14,
Yeah.
maybe 15, right? So when I speak in front of groups of people, I ask this one question. I say, by the way, everybody here, and they're adults, they're parents and grandmas and great grandmas, and say, raise your hand if you want to go back to junior high school. I have yet to have someone raise their hand because it's not a lot of times it's a lot of change going on in that time, right?
Yeah, everyone is going through something, and you're all together in one
you're
place.
You're physically going through changes, right? You're mentally going through changes. You're passing from childhood to adulthood, right? In that physical, mental sense.
And that can be very difficult.
That could be very difficult. So what the parents need to know, because they might just think, they're just going through what I went through in junior high. But maybe not.
Not always the case.
Because this is a whole new world. It's not like it was in the 70s, even into the 80s. It's all changed. I have 4 sisters. So if one of my sisters didn't come home, for dinner, which was rare, we just picked up the phone, not cell phones because they didn't have them then, picked up the phone and called around all the friends. Oh yeah, she's over there. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Whatever, right? Because we didn't have this problem then. There wasn't that issue. See, so it's a whole, so to me, and that's why we call ourselves, we fill the gap of a resource basically for law enforcement. Law enforcement they do not have the resources to go after runaway children. They just don't. There's not enough. So what we try to do is fill that gap for them and for the parents.
That's incredible. It is crazy though, because I'm thinking about my sister just graduated junior high, and she would tell me all these stories about, especially I would say the boys, but even the girls too. A lot of them were getting suspended, getting in trouble, acting out, and it's kind of the norm. And I think it is because their bodies are changing and have way more access to social media. And I think also people keep their locations on. They're not smart about it. And it's not good.
Oh, and it's traumatic. What is not traumatic to us, what it could be, but it's still okay. Let's take divorce, right? That's, what is it? 50% or more of all marriages end in divorce. So it's not that uncommon. So everybody knows somebody that had to go through a divorce, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a pleasant thing.
Especially when the parents are arguing in front of the children.
Well, or even the children knowing, well, I'm not going to be with both mommy and daddy, which they want to be. Now I'm going to be either with mommy or with daddy, or halfway, and this and that, and the split up and all that. Now when you're in that age group, 12, 13, 14, that's traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how the child tries it, it's not no, it's very traumatic, because when you're in that age, you accelerate the trauma of something. For example, if my best friend right now, right, calls me up and says, you know what, I just don't like you anymore, I'm unfriending you. I say, well, whatever. What do you think is going to hurt me? I said, hey, you think I'm going to shed a tear on that? I'm going to sleep just fine.
Yeah.
Bye. Right? I mean,
Yes.
But when you're 13 years old and your best friend does that to you, that's the end of the world. The world just stopped.
It's a big deal.
I'm falling off. Right? And I don't know if either of you can remember that.
Yes.
That's very traumatic. See, so you have that going into it, and these recruiters, and I want to use the street language, these pimps, right? That's what they look for. They look for that girl sitting somewhere by herself in a trauma state, or unfortunately if the girl posts this on one of their social networking sites, they latch onto it and they say, oh, you're too pretty to be upset. You could be anything. You could be a model. I mean, and what is the young who's going through trauma? You just want some kind words, right? And now this person is like their hero, right?
They're saying things that they want to hear.
They're saying things that maybe they want to hear, but they want to, everything's going to be okay, comforting, but then they exaggerate the comfort. See, it's not just everything's going to be okay. Right? A parent says that, it's going to be okay, we're going to work through this and all that. No, it's exaggerated. Oh, you're the most beautiful girl in your school. like, you know what I mean? You don't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
When you're 13 or 14, right? Now, and when you're in your 20s and 30s, usually, hopefully you grow, when somebody says, oh, you're the most beautiful person in the state of California, right? Go flatter somebody else.
Yes.
It's a whole different way of thinking mentally.
Absolutely. I mean, when we grow old, we sort of know what's BS and what's not.
Or
we're
what you allow to bother you.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like that's not really in the big picture of things. That's not important.
I understand.
Yeah.
Where would you say the most cases, where would you say the most danger is in the U.S.? I know that's very generic, but would you say because we're close to the border, you see more cases around San Diego? Or what would you...
when I talk about that statistic, there's 100,000 girls missing, right now, being trafficked. I'm sorry, 300,000 missing, 100,000 trafficked. That's U.S. girls. That's American girls. There's probably double that girls that are being brought over the border by the cartel because they don't have parents to report them missing. So that's just this underground of trafficked girls going on. Now, where the regions are where the sex trafficking is more prevalent, number one region, and it correlates with the border because it correlates with the people doing it, which is the same people who are doing narcotics trafficking. It's the same routes. So Texas is number one, San Diego corridor for California is number two, and Florida is number three. Because those are the drug corridors that cartels and gang members use to run drugs north of those areas from the border.
So, I want you to kind of recap on what you've told us offset when you were explaining how all that works. basically, like when you were saying about how they get from, okay, a poor family in Mexico or Guatemala or wherever, they pay like $5,000 to their to the cartel. Take my daughter with you. Oh yes, please. Can you kind of recap on that?
Yeah, that's the cartels own the border crossings.
They own it
because people pay for them. They call them coyotes. They pay somebody to get them over the border. Rarely do you have a family or whatever just go over the border. Somebody's paying somebody in most situations, especially with families. So you'll have the same people who are doing sex trafficking, right, colluding in organized crime here in this country are the same ones bringing people over the border. So you just put that together. So you have a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl that they're paying the same people who are trafficking girls. So what do you think's going to happen to the girl?
Trafficked.
And somebody paid for her to be trafficked.
Yeah,
not knowing it.
Like not only like taking, oh sure, I'd love to take your daughter or son over across the country and help a better life. Give me $5,000, thank you. And now I'm gonna. Not only did you just pay me $5,000, $10,000, whatever it would be, but now I'm also getting money from your daughter, like for services that she would be now forced upon.
They do this to people that they traffic from bringing over the border. Okay, your $5,000 didn't cover all the cost. This is really $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000.
Oh,
so
no.
you're gonna have to do something for us to pay that off.
Oh no!
And then you go into sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and other things.
Now they're just messing with their mentalities.
Now they've imprisoned them.
Oh no!
And then who are you gonna call, right? Who do you call? You're here illegally. Who do you call? And then they've already, you're messing with the cartel. So what's going to happen? Oh yeah, you go ahead and go to the police. We know where your mom and dad are in Honduras or wherever.
So, is there any way for them to get out of those situations at all?
Well, obviously, is to go to the police and let them know.
No matter the fact.
Yeah. So, and let federal law enforcement deal with it. But, how do you do that when, you're thinking that they have control over you?
Yeah, my family, everything.
Exactly.
What are the chances of that happening? You don't want to mess with drug cartels or trafficking cartels or anything like that, but what are the chances of them actually doing that? Taking your family from you, from life.
Oh yeah,
it's going to happen.
Yeah. Of course, the remedy is obviously border control.
Yeah.
Who's coming over the border and how they doing it, and to vet them on that side of the border, right? And then because what you're doing by not having control, you're actually assisting the cartels. That's
right.
just that's the bottom line. And I'm not being political here. That's just the truth of it. A guest we've had that we know, and a couple of our where we give out scholarships, our events that we do. We did one with him in San Diego and one in Las Vegas. Was Mark Morgan, who was the commissioner of the Border Patrol and ICE, appointed under President Donald Trump. And he came and talked at our events about what we're just talking about right here. And he's an expert, obviously. And he talked about this, is that unless you control the border, you're actually assisting the organized crime element. You're not deterring it.
Well, because then the cartels have the freedom to bring in who they want.
Exactly. And they control it. There's no control. And the cartels are prevalent on that side of the border in Mexico. Should be no surprise to anybody.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit, Joseph, about how this all started. How did Saved in America start? What was the thought process to even building this?
Yeah, I went to Bible college in, it was in the late 2000, 2001, and then became ordained as a pastor. And then I was doing different types of ministries. And in 2009, I read an article about a young girl named Brittany Drexel missing from upstate New York. And I watched this criminal, in criminal justice, you continue to study. I've continued to write books and study criminal justice. And I knew this was starting to happen. And I thought, I hope Brittany didn't, end up in child trafficking. So then I read an article a few weeks later about United States Navy SEALs going overseas and rescuing children. So I reached out to the SEALs that were doing that, and I asked them, I said, are you guys aware of what's going on in this country with American girls? Which they weren't. So at that point, they said, well, let's form an organization, with us. And we ended up, the term Saved in America was at a coffee house. So I lived at Oceanside. It's on the beach drinking coffee with a bunch of people. And we're just talking. I said, yeah, I'm going to do this organization with Navy SEALs and cops and investigators, and we're going to help, go after missing and runaway children. And everybody, oh, you really? So we're all talking, and we decided, hey, what should we name it? And one guy, I remember, he says, Made in America. And I said, no, we can't use Made in America. He said, that's probably, how are you going to get that trademarked, right?
Isn't it already on every dang American-made product?
Exactly. Right. And that's when I thought, right away, my mind just said Saved in America. Now it's trademarked. It was Saved in America. So that's how the name started. And then we went through, okay, how are we going to structure this? How are we going to do it?
Yeah.
And we eventually ended up with our first Operation Recovery in December 2014.
Amazing.
What are some of the biggest obstacles you faced getting it off the ground?
Methodology, to make sure you do it right. You don't want to interfere with what law enforcement does by any means, way, shape, or form. So we even have a law enforcement liaison who's a member of law enforcement that coordinates every step we do, because we don't want to get in their way. Because when I was in law enforcement, the last thing you want is someone to get in your way. And that's part of the reason everyone's licensed as a private investigator, because that's really what private investigators do. So if they're going to a surveillance for, on a private end, you call law enforcement and say, hey, I'm doing a surveillance outside of this address. This is the car I'm in. I'm armed or not armed, just so you know, to deconflict.
Yeah, here I am. I'm not a bad guy. I'm here to help.
Right, exactly. And this is my license number if you want it. Look me up and all that. So we learn how, with that profession, how to deconflict. So we can work and supplement them and not work against them.
Gotcha.
That makes a lot of sense. So you were saying that they don't have enough resources to go about these cases themselves. What is it, because they don't have enough people, or is it just they have so many other things going on?
Both, and money.
Money?
So three. It's okay. So many other things going on. So if you in law enforcement, you have a dispatch, and then all the officers out, the professionals in the field, they know too. You have priorities on the calls.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So if you have someone's breaking into a place now, and you have a runaway call, which one would you go to?
Breaking into the place.
And you're not even a police. You weren't trained for that, but that's what you do. So they have to prioritize their calls. So unless the child that's reported as a runaway has a medical condition that's serious and they need medication, or you have physical proof of an abduction, like a surveillance footage where someone physically abducted a child, or some other physical proof, then they don't really investigate. They enter the child's name on the National Crime Information Center, NCIC, which is managed by the FBI. And then so if a law enforcement officer comes across the child, then they show up. This child is a runaway, so they could take him into custody, get him back to their family. But do they actually go out and do what we do? Go try to locate them and do surveillance? They just can't. They don't have the resources to do it. Mm-hmm. They don't have the money and the budget to do it. And they have so many other things that take priority because of the first two. So but even if they do going to cross them. Let's say they do a traffic stop, right? So you have your probable cause to do a traffic stop because maybe somebody didn't signal when they turned right, and that's the law that you got to do it, or you didn't make a complete stop before at a red light before you turned right, or
Yes.
whatever the case may be.
And there's reasons for stopping that.
Right.
Mind people.
So you stop them,
Yeah.
right? And there's a guy in the car that's 25, and then there's a 15-year-old girl, or you say looks like 15. Say, hey, how you doing, man? Da 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 da. Right? License checks out and everything. Say, what's your name? So and so. Would you happen to have ID? Now, does that person in the car, the 15-year-old, really have to show them ID? Well, if the police officer can articulate the suspicion, if it's a reasonable suspicion, yeah, they do. So let's say they can articulate that, right? And the person, the 25-year-old, is really a predator, but has given the 15-year-old phony ID. So the 15-year-old goes, I have some ID right here.
That's a good topic to talk about.
This is true. This happened to one of the girls that we went from California through Texas to Florida that we eventually recovered. They were stopped by a state trooper in Texas, and the bad guy gave the girl a phony ID.
So, we know of someone who was, looking at potentially having an opportunity of getting a fake identification. Little does that person know that it's a felony. Can you kind of describe the penalties that someone would have to have?
See, and
just for parents?
That's state by state, whether it's a misdemeanor or felony. So,
Okay.
because each state has their own level, unless it's a federal crime.
Right on.
So it might be, I don't know the exact law, but maybe there's a federal crime, and if you have a phony federal ID. So I don't know what that is, a misdemeanor or felony. So it depends on the state.
I gotcha. Okay. So it really does depend on the state. But either way, it's bad for a number of reasons, right?
Correct. Well, I guess the point on that is, even if you do enter the child into NCIC, what makes it, how do you know that if somebody does eventually pull her over or come across her, that number one, she's not going to have a fake ID, or number two, she's just going to give a fake name?
Very true.
Because when you're not 18, there's nothing in the system, because you're a child.
You don't have
right?
a government identification,
Yeah,
so you're not in the system.
It's like, so how much time are you going to spend to inquire? Okay, well, who's your parents? And what if the girl says, well, I'm not going to tell you? I mean, now an officer has to articulate, do they hold the person there? Do you see what I mean? So when you tell somebody they can't leave, that's really an arrest. They call it a detention or detainment,
Yeah.
but it's really when a government authority says you can't go there now, you are technically arrested. Now, the officer better know why they're doing what they're doing, because now they're subject to false detainment or arrest. Do you see
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's another complication that regular civilians don't understand about law enforcement. You can't just do something because you feel this is the best way. I'm going to, check every person, every girl I see between the ages of 10 and 17 just to make sure nobody gets through me. But now you have to have the law on your side as you do that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people, I hate cops, so they would say, or this and that, and they kind of are missing the thing. Someone had said once, you don't like cops, call a crackhead. When you're in trouble. That was like a little thing that was floating around the internet at one point. But it's more so like they're there to help you. You know what I mean? Like pulling over someone who's 25 for making a right turn without a clicker on, and then asking questions like, who is this young woman with you, things like that, and them not giving much information. They're there to help you. But like a lot of children, like when I was a kid, we would hang out with older crowds too, right? I feel like a lot of people do, and I had in the back of my head as well, was like, it's not that bad, mom. It's not that big of a deal, she's just older, or he's just older, and things like that. But it got to the point where those people did definitely, really can take advantage of you without you even realizing it at such a young age. And then when someone with experience sort of explains to you, this is what they're doing, it, like baby steps into something potentially bigger.
Yeah, and that's the general people say, well, how do you prevent something like this happen with your child?
Yeah.
Prevention. How do you do it? There's no catch-all. You really though have to know your child. You're not going to be 100% friends with your child because that's bad parenting. You have to stay a parent, but you can be a friend to your child and still be a parent, and still know and understand and explain. Take the time with your child to explain things. See, and that's still not 100% foolproof, because we have in those books, we have some very good parents, and it's just unfortunate. I mean, there's a thing called good and there's a thing called evil, and just so your audience knows, I'm a pastor, so this is the way I look at it. This is whatever the Bible says, that's it, that's the way it is. That's it. I'm not going to argue with God. I mean, who am I to argue with God, right?
Right.
And I'm just not going to do that. So whatever His Word says is true, and that's just the way it goes. So
that's what it is.
That's it. So, but my advice to parents on that note, there is good and there is evil. And there's people out there that aren't good. I mean, I know there is this theory going around, even I remember it back when I was in school, that you're essentially people are good people. Excuse me? No, that's, everybody is born good. Well, if everybody was born good, why do we have murderers and robbers and rapists and pedophiles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Thieves and armed robberies and assaults and batteries. That's not good. Right? So
100%.
So but that's a lot of, I don't know how you were taught in school, if you went to public school or private school, but that's the prevailing, I think, still theory in public school, right?
Well, what I was taught was that people learn that behavior, like either from friends, family. Like obviously when you're a baby, you don't know how to speak, you don't know anything. So you learn to hate certain people. You learn to be
so they teach
way.
you learn evil.
Yeah.
Well, how could you learn something that doesn't exist? When was evil born? Oh, wait a second now. Seriously, how do you learn something that doesn't exist? You can't. So where did it come from? Well, logically, it had to come from people. Evil is innately in you.
Evil is within.
And you're innately in you good. But you have a choice. Which one? Good or evil?
Yeah, every day you have a choice to make a terrible decision or a good decision.
Exactly. So it's not just you're learning evil from somebody. No, you can't. No, it has to be rationally. Both those have to be. This can, do I do this or do I do that?
Everyone has a choice.
Everybody has their choice, no matter what it is, right?
Yeah. Turning your turn signal on or not.
Yeah. So, and I know, and you just, and that's just the way they teach, though, that you're good and you have to learn the evil. Well, who do you learn it from? I guess there's this big, bad, evil person that existed somewhere that passed it along. So, if you go with the evolutionist theory, right, I guess it was the cosmic goo on the rock that turned into some kind of living something, and one of them learned evil.
Wow.
one of the cosmic goos learned evil. I mean, it's just so irrational. It doesn't even, it's very interesting to talk about. But anyway, but there is evil, and I think parents have to understand that, because can you imagine, and we look for runaway kids, right? But we don't deal with, because that's not what we do. But there's worse than that. I mean, you think, what could be worse than that? Well, there's worse than that. Pedophilia, taking, babies and infants and doing things that are disgusting, and we don't go into that realm. We focus on trying to find runaways and missing kids before they get exploited. So,
How can our listeners and our viewers either donate to their organization, or if they need help, how can they find you?
well, just go to savedinamerica.org, savedinamerica.org, and everything will be on the website. We'll have volunteer programs. We have an entire collection of videos. We have a YouTube. We have, Instagram and all those other ones that we're always, updating, putting out information. A yearly report that talks about what we've done. So just go on the website and you'll find anything to assist Saved in America on the website.
What's wonderful is I've noticed on your website you also have, it goes generally. I think I can't recall. It's either by state or area, like Riverside, San Francisco, San Diego, so on and so forth. For an example of missing children that are on there on your page.
Yeah, we have
as well.
We call Child Saved Not Sold link.
Yes,
That's one of our. It's hashtag Child Saved Not Sold.
Child Safe Not Sold. Just like it says on your shirt.
On the shirt, right.
Your mission is Child Safe Not Sold.
And that's what we want to do. We want to get the missing kids where the trafficker does. It's a race it's a clock race for us.
There's an hourly time, right? Isn't it like 90 something hours, give or take, before you never see them again? Is that really a thing? Or in some situations?
Our average time to, and this is the average, 5.5 days.
Oh.
Once we get contacted, 5.5 days. Now, the one story I told you, that was a 2.5 month journey. But sometimes we'll find a child just by going in social networking really quick. Oh, she's over there. There you go.
Boom.
So that's just average. If they're gone over so much time, is that forever? No, not true. You could, if you have the right expertise, and you could find a child. You just don't quit. But our Child Saved Not Sold link on the website, we always, since we're from San Diego, right on the border of Riverside County. So those are the missing kids we update every 2 weeks, the missing children in San Diego County and in Riverside County. And then the other ones are from parent-initiated calls. Uh-huh. Now we'll do special operations, and that's the other way we find children, is what we call our geographical method. So the times, like I told you, we went out to Vegas to do operations, we will do research 2 to 4 weeks before we go with all the missing kids in the Vegas area and start to work them up, and then we'll end up with a list that may have clues, and then we'll actually go to Vegas and work those children.
That's really cool.
So, and then we'll add that to Child Saved Not Sold at the time. These are the kids we're working on, and if you have a tip line, call us. The tip line is on the website. So just, and the biggest thing for your audience is if someone in your audience or someone they know has a missing or runaway child, call us, and for free we'll help you.
Is there a phone number you'd like to state, just out of curiosity?
It's 760-348-8808.
Pause it and rewind it if you need it now, or go to
savedinamerica.org. The best way, though, instead of calling, is actually go to the website, because there's a link that says help us. Like they need help.
Okay, so they can just message you.
Right. Well, there's a application process.
Oh.
There's part 1 and part 2. There's a power of attorney that allows us to communicate with public officials, because a child has privacy rights. So we can't talk to the police or medical people in the county or whatever without permission. So we do a power of attorney, and then we also want them to have a police report. So before we take a case, we want them to have a police report and report that child to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So there's a poster up on the child.
That's very covered.
Yeah, we want it to be where we have every chance of success to recover the child for the parent.
And these are the steps that need to happen in order to make it a great chance of getting your little girl or little boy back.
Correct. Increases the odds of location and recovery.
That's beautiful. Well, Joseph, we really, really appreciate you for coming on Stressful to Successful. and just hearing your story and how you set this whole wonderful organization up and all the wonderful people involved. Unfortunately, they're not here with us today, but maybe down the line.
Yeah, we have in-house meetings, different locations. Corporations let us go, to do our meetings with all the operators, and sometimes we actually do operations out of the meetings.
Oh.
So if we do, we'll let you know, give you a call.
Yeah,
That'd
we
be
would love
awesome.
to.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Joseph, and we really do appreciate you coming on and spreading the word of what to and to not do, in a sense.
Yeah, thank
and
you
look
for helping spread this, and God bless your audience.